Good morning. Well, I first want to say thank you, Father Steve. As we all know, it is amazing, all of the things that he does in our community. I'll also just say personally how wonderful it is always to follow a president of a university. You always learn something new. As I came in this morning, he first said break a leg, and then he explained what that meant. He told me that this was an old English expression that was shared with actors, and what it meant was, may you perform so well that when you are finished, you'll actually deserve to bend your knees and bow and be applauded. And he breaks both legs every day for Seattle, so thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. It was 4 years ago that my wife, Kathy, and I, as some of you may know, really had the great pleasure of kicking off the year that we had to chair the United Way campaign. It's an experience that a number of people in this room have had. It's an amazing experience, in all honesty. I mean, we loved every minute of it. And there were a couple of things that frankly stood out. We had the chance to just learn so much about the people in our community, about their needs, the issues they face, and certainly about everything the United Way is doing to really bring so many groups and people across this community together to forge real solutions for them. But it also taught us something else that we will never forget. That's the incredible generosity in this room and in this county. It was a year where we had the opportunity to significantly overshoot the campaign goal. And as you heard John mention a little while ago, Matt Griffin, who's been chairing this year's campaign, is likely to top his goal as well. We shouldn't give him too much applause yet because he has 47 more days of hard work ahead of him. But I think we can give him some encouragement. Thank you, Matt, for an amazing year. Well, this morning I want to talk a little bit about the opportunity gap. It's really the gap that bars so many young people from realizing their potential. It is a gap that I know many of us in this room see. I know that none of us feels good about it. It clashes with our basic hopes for the community, our basic sense of fairness. I think it's something that we all deeply believe we need to address to ensure that everyone who is in this county has the opportunity to succeed. But to me, the most disturbing aspect of the opportunity gap is the fact that it opens when people are extremely young. The reality is this: if you're a child and you're poor, your life prospects can begin to narrow on the very day that you are born. That's the reality. And you see this in the faces of the kids in our community. You see it in the contrast between the opportunities that are created for different kids. Compare these kids, Kayla and Jacob. Kayla is a lucky one. She has parents that are probably like a lot of people in this room. They're college educated, they're professionals. They read to her every night. And on many weekends, you'll find Kayla with one or more of her parents at places like the Children's Museum or the Pacific Science Center or the library. But compare Kayla to Jacob. He's the child of parents who only finished high school. Between those two parents, they work 4 jobs, and they still barely make it financially. At the end of the day, they're exhausted. They have little energy to read to their boy or otherwise enrich his early years, and the reality is they don't necessarily know how to do that because when they were kids, nobody did it for them. Or compare Sophia and Eli. Sophia is a girl whose family is homeless. She has not had a stable address in nearly 2 years. She is falling farther and farther behind in school each and every day. Now, Eli, in contrast, the only change of address he's experienced in the last 2 years was when he spent a week at his grandmother's house. And he thought that was a vacation. He wants to go back. He has great opportunities in life. Or consider Addison and Peter. Addison is a buoyant and bright 4-year-old who chatters happily in both English and Mandarin because she's learning both in a pre-K immersion program. Peter has had his own international experience, but of a completely different kind. His family fled the war in South Sudan. His parents are overwhelmed by their new country. And what meager English Peter is learning comes from sitting in front of a television set. These, in fact, are real experiences of real kids in our community. Of course, we shouldn't feel bad about the kids who are thriving. That's great. We want more kids to thrive. That's a terrific thing about our community. But the fact is that our success as a community depends on enabling more kids to thrive. And if you're on the wrong side of the opportunity gap, like Jacob or Sophia or Peter, you're like an increasing number of kids in King County. And the fact is, your future is in peril. The numbers tell us, the reports show us that school performance, in fact, correlates strongly to these kinds of factors, to a degree that, in fact, is alarming. And what makes it even worse is that not only are these kids in poverty, but the gap between rich and poor in schools, in math and reading, if you look at the numbers, that gap is 40% higher today than it was 30 years ago. That doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve these kids. It doesn't serve their families. It doesn't help our community, because the reality is we need this talent for the future. I sit on the Futures Committee of the University of Washington, and one of the things I've definitely taken away from that experience is some other data that absolutely has stuck with me. We are creating the jobs for these kids. We're creating more jobs than we can fill. The reality is every year, this year, next month, the University of Washington will graduate 6,000 students. That's fantastic. They could graduate another 6,000 on top of that, and there are jobs waiting for that number. The jobs exist. But now we need to nurture the kids so they can earn those degrees and fill those jobs in the future. We need to set them up for success and the skills for the future: science, technology, engineering, math, and so many other things that connect with the opportunities that lie ahead. But of course, all this needs to start way upstream, and the good news is that is where you'll find the United Way. Working on fundamentals like ensuring that the kids and families actually have the opportunity to meet their basic needs. Two great examples. One is the work that the United Way is doing to shore up families financially with the Earned Income Tax Credit. As the name implies, this is a federal tax credit offered to working families. It can be complicated to fill out the tax forms. I think we all know that. And that's where specially trained United Way volunteers come in. This year, 850 people, a number in this room, pitched in on a free tax prep campaign. They worked with people who filed more than 17,000 tax returns, and those tax returns brought back $24 million to families who need that money in our community. That is a great thing. Another example is the work to fight hunger. No child should have to go to bed hungry. So the United Way is backing summer meals programs that will help low-income kids like Sophia stay nourished when school is out. Between last summer and this summer, the result of this program will produce 1 million meals. I mean, think about that. 1 million meals. We should just say it again. 1 million meals. That is an amazing achievement. And one of the wonderful things about this program is that it's really happening through the efforts of young people themselves. A lot of the organizing work is done by outstanding VISTA volunteers. And there are dozens of high school kids and recent grads who, in exchange for a small stipend, are spreading the word. They're pitching in at the meal sites. They're coming up with fun activities so that people can not only eat, but connect with each other and learn something along the way. In King County this summer, there will be more than 265 summer meal sites, places like parks and community centers where people can come together. Of course, once families are more financially stable and kids are getting enough to eat, the real question is what comes next? That is actually a question that has a very clear answer. It's about ensuring that kids reach their milestones and they have the opportunity to learn in a way that will fuel their entire lives. That's why the United Way puts funding into the detection and treatment of developmental delays. It's also why we fund improvements to childcare for low-income families. And importantly, perhaps most importantly, at least for this morning, it's why we fund the Remarkable Parent-Child Home Program. It's a program that aims to close the education opportunity gap early and profoundly. Kathy and I were thrilled when 4 years ago we were able to be part of launching the expansion of that program as the year's campaign chairs. And it's so gratifying to see how it has grown. It is so wonderful to see, frankly, the people it has benefited. Our next speaker, Sarah Walzer, is undoubtedly the nation's leading expert on this program. I'm eager to hear what she has to say, but let me just give you a couple of observations about how this program is working locally here in King County. We have now succeeded in extending this program to 1,000 kids a year. 1,000 kids. And I think the thing that's most amazing about that is that's a big number, but every number has a name. Every name is a person. Every person is an individual, and because of this program, there are this morning 1,000 kids in King County who will have a better life decades from now because of what people in this room have done already. That is an amazing thing. The campaign for the Parent-Child Home Program has raised more than $18.5 million towards our $25 million goal. Thank you to everybody in this room who has helped. We're also incredibly enthused about how school districts have stepped forward. They've really embraced this program. They're stepping forward as co-funders. And now the program has received support from other groups like Thrive by Five. You may also know that the Seattle Families in Education Levy is now providing support as well. The Parent-Child Home Program is so significant because in reality, it really meets the needs of the most vulnerable people in our community. People who are so young, people who are spread throughout our community, people at Crossroads in Bellevue, at Northgate and Shoreline and Auburn and beyond. These are families that, in addition to being very poor, are dealing with lots of other challenges, whether it's young parenthood, perhaps being a refugee, a recent immigrant, or even homelessness, as Father Steve talked about. In other words, these, in fact, are the kids who are the least prepared even for pre-K. The amazing thing about the Parent-Child Home Program is it really does create an effective bridge from the state that these kids find themselves in today and the opportunity that they'd like to have the chance to meet in the future. And the reality is they come out of this gap, they come over that bridge, and when they do, they actually come out of the other side sprinting.